Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Idea Collective Small Business Incubator Simple 60 Workshop. I'm Brent Halfwassen, Milwaukee Small Business Coach, and I'm going to be your host for today's event. This event would not be possible without the sponsorship of the Idea Collective Small Business Incubator, Bank 59, and Quick Trip. So a big thanks to all of you for coming on. What do we want to do here at this Simple 60 Workshop? It is simple. We want to help you establish, grow, and scale your business up. And I happen to believe that the business experts make business way too hard, and I think it's simple. And I think it's simple because human behavior is what it is. We don't tend to change very much. So I think you can focus on one, two, or maybe three things to make your business a little bit better. And as those continue to improve, we'll find the next ones to go. But if we're keeping it simple, we're going to be able to succeed. When we make it complex, and we're going to talk about it here as we dive into our topic today, which is planning, because I believe planning is killing small business. You heard it right. I believe planning is killing small business. I've heard the statistics. I've seen the numbers. I've seen the information. I don't think that they're talking about the same thing that you and I are talking about when we're talking about planning. And I want to dig into why I think that's true and where we're going. Before we do that, if you have an opportunity, I'd like to hear what you do for right now for planning. So we got, if you can take this quick survey, it's bit.ly/no planning. And I would love to know what you do for your business currently. There's 2 yes or no questions and one open-ended survey, just comment to be able to leave some comments. So I would love to hear that. For those of you who are just coming on and join us, please do go ahead in the chat. Drop your name, drop your company information, drop a way for people to meet you. Put your website on there, put LinkedIn on there. Someone wants me to put the link in the chat. I would absolutely love to do that. Let's do that. There it is. Link is now officially dropped in the chat. Go ahead and click on that. Take a look. There's a QR code down there for those of you watching the recording later. You can go ahead and get that. You can still get in later. Let me tell you a little bit about why it's important that we're digging in here. I bet you that when we go and look at the survey results, which I'm going to take a look at here in just a moment, we're going to find out that people spend tons and tons of energy taking a look at what they need to do for planning. And what ends up happening as a result is people end up getting stuck. We end up getting stuck either not feeling like we're doing adequate planning, we feel like we're doing too much planning. And if I could tell you, I have probably coached, I'm getting on to probably about 1,000 different businesses and entrepreneurs that I've worked with in my coaching career. And if I had $1 for every person that said, I just need to get my business plan going so I can get into business. And I said, I think you need only a few conditions are necessary in order to be successful in business. You need to have a problem that you're solving, customers who are experiencing that problem, who are willing to pay you money, and someone who's willing to give you that money in order to succeed. If you have a customer that'll buy and they give you the money, you're in business. Nowhere in there does that require a business plan. I've also worked with a lot of businesses that are actually being quite successful, and they say, well, what can I do to help you? And they're like, well, I'd like to write a business plan. And my question is always why. So if you're not asking why you're doing the planning, you're missing out, because you've allowed planning to become a thing to be done rather than a tool to be used. Let's just I'm going to take a look at the survey results right now. We'll take a quick look. First question is, do you complete a budget every year for your business? 100% of people said no, which is all right. I'm not here to judge. I actually think a budget is important, but I'm going to touch on why I believe they don't get done and why it's hard. And hint, hint, if anyone wants to drop some hints with the Idea Collective Small Business Incubator leaders, I'd like to run a budgeting clinic, because I think it's actually really simple and people are making it super hard, and I would suspect that's why. Next question was, do you have a written plan for your business? And we got a couple of sort ofs, which a lot of people are in that category. I was tempted not to put that in there, but I didn't want people to say, well, I've written a paragraph, so that should count. A couple of sort ofs and one yes. Okay. And then what keeps us from doing any planning, if anything? Too many day-to-day plates to spin. There's too much going on. We got another person that says, I do quarterly planning, but it hasn't. Sorry, here we go. Scrolling, getting stuff out of the way. Good job, screen management, but it hasn't been consistent. That's another thing. But again, I actually think it's close to the first one. It is difficult to stop and take the time to plan when we make it so complicated. Mainly taking the time to sit down and doing it, trouble prioritizing it. You're seeing a theme. We need to get done what we need to get done in our business, and we don't have the time to do it. So good news, Brent Halfwassen, Milwaukee Small Business Coach, is saying, stop with the planning. We're going to talk about what I want you to do instead. Ready? Buckle up. Here we go. Here's the deal. When a lot of people think about planning, I'm going to talk about the business plan a little bit, and I'm going to talk about some of the other templates and things that float around. We tend to go to an out-of-date format. That is anytime anyone going to Google a business plan format, you are using an out-of-date format, in my opinion. They always start out with, every year in America, there are 19 million people that really need to buy bread. And so I'm going to start a bakery on the corner of First and Center, and I'm going to crush it here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I'm like, what? Like that? I don't know what that has to do with anything. Has anyone even tasted your bread? Do you make bread? Do you even know what you're doing? Who's your customer? Why do people need bread? None of that tends to get handled in some of these formats until about page 17, when you've completely lost your audience if you need one. A lot of the planning processes are modeled for large companies, people who've got 10, 20, 50, 100, 1,000 employees. I did a lot of planning work when I was with a very large corporation. In part, you need that because you have so many people. You've got to figure out how to align them, get them on the same page, get people moving in the same direction, because you're driving a cruise ship. Small business owners, we're driving a small fishing boat where we can turn, and we're agile and we can move around. So sometimes the planning processes are overwhelming because they're not meant for us. They're meant for larger organizations. And yeah, are there principles we could adopt? Sure. But oh my goodness, I would never recommend you do the full process that we ever did at the company I used to work for. Not because it wasn't good for them, but because it's not good for small business. And a lot of times when we do plans, we assume it's a static environment. We're recording this right now at the end of August 28th, 2023. We're only 3 years out of COVID. No one had a plan for COVID, but there are contingencies, and there are some things that some people were able to act better than others. And I think it's because of how they didn't plan, how they came up with a different mindset we're going to talk about. Let's think about the paradigm that I think we're in as far as small business owners are at. We talk about, here's some concepts that we run into a lot. MVP. We're not talking about the Brewers making a run for the playoffs here. What we're talking about is the minimum viable product. It's a concept that folks who are raising money, it's going to be one of the questions you're going to be asked all the time. What it means is that, what is the very least we need to do to get into business? I touched on it earlier. If I'm actually good at baking bread, do I need a business plan to get started? No, I need a bunch of people who would love to buy my bread. Maybe people who I've given loaves to over the years, or I've interacted with them. They've come to eat at my house and they're like, Brent, you can really make some bread. Like, if you ever made bread, I'd buy some from you. Really? Okay, I've been thinking about getting into business. I'm going to bake some bread and sell it to you. That's your minimum product. Do I need 17 types of bread? And do I need to do research on the indices and how the price of rye is moving around? No, I don't need to do any of that. I need to make a loaf of bread. I need to sell it. Are there other pieces we need to do eventually? Yes, but this is the minimum viable product. That's a world we live in, but I don't think most of the planning that we do interacts with that concept. The next one is lean. Lean just means I don't have a whole bunch of extra stuff sitting around. People are talking about just-in-time inventory. We're talking about running it smoothly and making it figure out. Most entrepreneurs, I believe, almost by necessity, end up being a little bit lean. Why? I don't have all this extra money sitting around to have tons of extra floating around. Usually, I'm running, frankly, a little bit too lean. And I'm trying to figure out, well, if I got to bake that bread, how do I bake this one, get the money, be able to get to the store, buy more supplies, and be able to roll it out again? And then there's a concept called Agile. Many of you haven't heard of Agile, potentially. It's big when you're talking about project management. But the funny part is that when you take a giant project, Agile says, hey, why don't we break that into little small pieces, and we can actually figure out how to do just the small piece without having to scope the entirety of the project that goes on. And you know what I call that? I call that entrepreneurship. That's what entrepreneurs do all the time. When I'm like, oh, I need to set up a new customer relation management program, and I don't have time to do all this stuff, what do? I'm just going to do one little piece. Hey, today I'm going to figure out how to set up a follow-up system so that when I meet a potential client for the first time, I follow up with them in 48 hours, for example. Well, that's actually doing some agile thinking. As entrepreneurs, we don't have the luxury of having these huge projects with scopes, timelines, and Gantt charts, and 15 people working on it and need to allocate all this other stuff. I don't have time for all that. If you look at the answers that were given in today's survey, most of you probably don't have time for that either, but we think agilely. The planning cycles usually aren't agile. They are, draw out your plan for you. Give me your 1 year, your 3 year, and your 10-year forecast. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? A 10-year forecast. I used to be in finance, so I'm going to give you a hint. Everyone's numbers, everyone's projected numbers for 3 years out, they are completely and totally fabricated. They're made up. People are playing in Excel. You can quote me. You can have the news call me. They're completely fabricated. It's not because people are trying to rip you off and cheat and commit fraud. That's not at all what I'm saying. No one has a level of insight to know what's going to go on in 3 years. You're just guessing. Oh, I'm going to get another point of market share. I'm going to keep growing. If I go up 20,000 this year, maybe I'm going to go up 50,000 next year. And the year after that, I'm going to go up 500,000. I've seen those business plans a bunch of times and they're all bogus. Stop. We're small business owners. We're lucky to figure out what's going on in the next year. Forget 3 years. And large business was frankly no different. If I looked at all the plans we ever did, the 3-year plan was always to just give us a baseline to figure out what's actually the next 1-year plan going to be so that we can set a budget. So don't focus that far out because we change, we pivot, we move around, new opportunities show up. We have to embrace change, and the traditional planning cycle does not embrace change. And again, we're going to talk about what it is that we need to do. Again, if you have questions, drop it in. Here's what I think we need to do. We need to drop planning and we need to start thinking about being prepared or preparedness. What do I mean by that? I'm going to give you a couple of examples here. So you may know when you go to a hotel, you may have seen the map on the back of your door. It's what to do in the event of a fire. The hotel probably has a giant stack for the response of what's going to happen. Here's the plan that's going to happen in the event of a fire. What do I need to know? I need to know which stairwell to take, number 1, and number 2. Same thing in my house. But if you put it in the traditional business planning model, you know what it would say? Every year in America, there are 19 million homes that have issues with fires. And of those 19 million homes, 4,000 don't have fire extinguishers. And stop. I don't need to know all that. What I need to do is be prepared. So in the event of a fire, what stairwell am I going to take in? If that one doesn't work, can I go out the window? Do I have a fire extinguisher? If the alarm goes off, do I know is my carbon monoxide or my fire done? I'm prepared, but I don't have an in-depth plan. I don't need the in-depth plan because situations come at us so fast and so furious, and they can be so numerous. There's no way we can plan for them all. If anyone's ever worked for, this is particularly larger organizations, governmental may have it, just giant manuals. What's our response plan when XYZ happens? But if we're tied in to the rigidness of that, one, we just don't do it. I don't have time for all that. But can you put together a preparedness plan? What happens if I go to this festival and end up just really rocking it? Do I have a vendor that can maybe ship me something overnight so I could have something for day 2 if I sell out in day 1? That's being prepared. Do I need a giant plan and have the list of everything that I would possibly order and think about what's the likelihood I'm going to sell out and the percentage? No. But maybe if I'm going to be prepared, I figured out a vendor. Or I figured out what in my existing physical location could I go pull off the shelves and go ahead and bring and just be okay telling my customers on Monday and Tuesday, hey, we rocked it this last weekend at Locust Street Days, and we're running low, but we'll get it back in on Wednesday. That's okay. Think about a stroke. No one wants to have a stroke, but does anyone know what the acronym is? Bonus points if you know the acronym that they're preaching now in order to respond to a stroke. Go ahead and type it in the chat if anyone knows it. What you want to look for. And I'll give you a hint in the acronym. I don't believe the acronym is planning. I think the acronym is preparedness. It's FAST. You want to look at someone's face. Is their face lopsided? When a stroke, it tends to asymmetrically affect the body. The A, you want to look at their arms. I got a limb that's just sort of unresponsive. S, you're looking at their speech. Are they slurring their speech? If they do, you got T. Time is very essential. You got to get someone to the hospital within 3 hours of their first signs of a stroke in order to administer a certain type of medicine that can be successful. That's what you and I need to know to be prepared for a stroke. Do I need the entire plan that a hospital has to have? Nope, I don't. And we break things down to these acronyms in order to remember them for emergencies like that, down, stop, drop, and roll. That's my plan if my clothing catches on fire. Do I need to know the likelihood of my particular clothing catching on fire? Is it cotton versus wool versus acrylic versus nylon? Nope, don't need to plan for any of that. I just need to know to stop, drop, and roll. And I think business is just that simple. I think the pandemic, the thing that separated us in the pandemic as we move forward is there were those businesses who were prepared. Were they prepared for the pandemic? No, no one was prepared for the pandemic. Well, that's not true. There are a few preppers who were prepared for the pandemic and some people who are watching a lot of sci-fi that were waiting for this to happen. But for the rest of us, what are we going to do with our businesses? If you pulled up your plan and your budget, you're like, yeah, but I was planning to grow 20% this year. And what I need to keep doing is getting in front of these live events and, oh, sorry, right, all canceled. But for the people who were prepared, it was a mindset of, what do I do to take small incremental chunks to make little pieces in order to do something differently? How do I pivot? How do I move to the next item? So if you shift your mindset from, hey, I need to plan to be prepared. And what do I want you to be prepared for? I want you to be prepared for the most likely things that will happen. And I just want you to have thought about it. When people come to me and they say, Brent, I need to write a business plan. First, I'm like, why? Who is going to read it? Because if it's just you, you don't need a business plan for yourself. There you go. Chris is saying the sci-fi people did know. That's absolutely true. You don't need a business plan for yourself. Your banker maybe needs a business plan. Although, interestingly, I will tell you, if you want to raise $1 million on a wild idea, you can get a pitch and a great story and you'll get funded. If you want to raise $20,000 from your bank, they're going to want a business plan. Go figure it out. But I'm going to contend that the folks who have figured out the model with the investment funding, that there's a different model. Do you have to know the answers to the questions? Yes, but it's how you tell your story. And I think the people who are prepared can tell their story and they don't go into the gory, silly details that most of us fall into. Let me dial in here. Just give some ideas. We talked about the budget a little bit. Here's why I don't think budgeting is super hard. Because the budget is a guideline and an idea and actually helps me set an operational goal. Give an example. I would like to raise my revenue by 20% for next year. Cool. I'm going to use some simple numbers. Today, I have 10 customers paying me some amount of money. Doesn't matter. So if I want to raise revenue by 20% next year, why don't I just get 20% more customers? So now I know for my goal for next year, I need to go get 2 more customers. I need to keep all the ones I have and get 2 more customers, or I need to be at 12 somehow. Maybe I know the details of how many are going to renew. Let's say 20% don't renew. So of those 10, I'll have 8. I got to go find 4 new customers to get my revenue up by 20%. Done. My budgeting is finished. I can move on. I'm going to go through my expenses once and I'm going to be like, man, do I really need all those subscriptions? Yes, no. Did that work for me when I hired that person to do that thing? Should I do it again? Yes, no. I think you can accomplish budgeting in less than an hour. And I think you can put it in and then be done with it. Here's the challenge with a budget. And I've had this battle with so many people in the business world. What do you do with your budget in the middle of the year when things aren't working out right? And my answer is take the piece of paper, rip it up, throw it away. It's not useful anymore. Budgets rarely last. Even in a large corporation, the budgets didn't last anything. The budgets for a lot of people end up being an allocation of money. You may not spend more than this money. But if the reality is there, when I'm a small business, the amount of money that I can spend isn't on my budget piece of paper. It's on my bank statement. How much cash I have in the bank is going to drive that. That's why forecasting is so important. And by the way, there's a Money Slam program that Lynn Karazi and I and Julie Callahan and Megan Schwan lead. And I recommend everyone attend it because we are trying to bring some financial concepts to, again, keep it simple and provide access to folks who maybe were intimidated or decided they didn't want to go there. Forecasts are just the update of what's going on. Oh, today I have 9 customers. I got 2 potential prospects, and I think I'm going to close once. My forecast is I'm going to be at 10. But my budget says I have to be at 12. What am I going to? Don't worry about it. Look, I want to focus on reality. Budgets bog us down. What budgets help us do is align, how do I need to move forward? Have I looked at what I did last year and figured out how to tweak it? How am I going to tweak it so that I'm prepared on what to do? When someone says, hey, there's a great opportunity to spend a bunch of money on it because I did a quick budget, I'm prepared to go, nope, I'm going to put $1,000 in that account, even if it's mentally. So I'm not doing the $5,000 thing. Why? Because I put together some type of preparedness focus, and that's where I'm going to spend my focus. Okay. We can review. We review what's going on. We do not stay static. That plan, you maybe have heard people say plans never survive the battlefield. Remember, planning is everything and the plans are nothing. When they say planning is everything, all we're talking about is what's going on with our mind. Am I prepping my mind? Have I thought about that for a period of time? Do I have an idea where it would go? But I will tell you, almost every day, business owners face the situation. They're like, I didn't think of that. By the way, I didn't think of that means I didn't plan for that. We don't break down, cry, and go into a corner and can't do anything with the rest of our lives. We absolutely can get some work done. When we're prepared, we have a response plan. We have an idea. I know kind of what I offer. I know my value proposition. We're going to get into some of these things. KPIs, these are key performance indicators. This thought process brings you to what are these key performance indicators. I just gave you an example in a business scenario I put out there. My key performance indicator is probably how many potential clients do I have in the funnel? Because remember, I needed to get 2, or if I have a renewal rate of only 80%, I need 4 additional clients. So your key performance indicators are just helping you get that. That's all that matters now in your business when I'm trying to measure what matters. I've narrowed all the nonsense down, and I didn't write a giant plan. We are not in English class anymore, people. I cannot tell my kids this. They're still in school. So I'm like, oh, writing, super important. And it is important. And you better be able to write your articles and blogs and however else you do your content management out there, it better look good. But most times a business plan is an English writing exercise. It is not a business helpful exercise. Figure out what you need to do to be prepared. Let me drive through 6 points that are going to be super important that I think you need to know. And you need to have thought about when you get into preparedness. What do you need to know? Number 1 is the problem. Everyone has them, and they spend money to solve them. We are in business to solve problems. We are not in business to sell bread. I am not in business to help business owners start amazing businesses. You are not in business to help people do their finances, do their bookkeeping, do graphic arts, whatever it is that you particularly do. You are in business to solve a problem. The problem I solve for people is I think business owners work far too hard and don't have enough cash to show for it. So I want to turn your hard work into hard cash. How do I do that? There's a million ways, but the problem you're solving is, man, I want to get a reward out of this. That's the problem I try and solve. I don't know what the problem you're solving, but you need to think about what you do in terms of problems, because problems are opportunities. Opportunities are when we take our preparedness, we apply it to the opportunity. Now I've got an opportunity to make some more money. That's what people did during the pandemic. That's when people put in the drive-through window at the restaurant and figured out how they could absolutely crush it with like 2% of the staffing funding, and they could do double the revenue, and to get customers to come more frequently because they were the ones that pivoted first and came into the space. Now, again, the world has changed again now that we've opened back up, but there's a new problem to be solved. What is that problem? Can I adjust? Can I figure out, take my prepared state and go in there? They do not show up in the plan. When these problems show up, these problems have not shown up in a planning cycle, but you can address them when you're prepared. Okay. Problems matter more to customers than business plans. So first, focus on your problem, then you can make a plan. If you're convinced that you got to make a plan because someone's telling you to, cool, but you got to know the problem first, then make a plan. And remember, it's about being prepared. Do I have a sense of where I'm at? Do I know what's going on? Do I have a general idea? Is your gut feel as a business owner should be better than a lot of other people's data, because you're in it, you can feel it, you know it. Now, I do believe you need to validate it with data, because a lot of us live not quite on this side of reality, and that's just because we have confirmation bias. There's a lot of things that go on, but know the problem first. If I can't convince you not to plan and just be prepared, then I want to convince you to know that problem first. Customers, you got to find customers who are experiencing the problem, and that takes some time. But finding those who are willing to pay takes even longer. A lot of times we see a problem and we're like, that person's got the problem, I'm going to go solve that problem. We'll make sure they're willing to pay you some money. Again, you have 2 conditions necessary in order to start a business. You got to have a problem you're solving and a customer willing to pay you for it. Once you get there, you're in business. Congratulations. Post revenue. Let's go. Let's get it done. Let's figure out how to make it amazing. Let's figure out how to grow it. But you got to have customers who are willing to pay for it. So if you get prepared around customers, you're trying to launch a new part of your business. You're trying to grow the business you're at. Where are you at? What customers are you serving? What problem are you solving for them? Are they willing to pay for it? If you think around those things, that will get you prepared to be able to adjust. You'll be prepared for maybe objections they'll give you. You'll be prepared for what to do when they walk in your facility. You'll be prepared to answer the question when you're out in the community and the topic of what you do comes up. Be prepared for that. Right? Who's your ideal customer? Your ideal customer are the customers who have the problem that you are solving. You're solving a problem. If you have not thought about your business in terms of problem solving, please, please, please. I want to give you 2 takeaways because I want you to start thinking about being prepared. But the first thing you can do to be prepared is figure out what problem are you solving. It totally And I think radically will change the way you embrace how to be able to be ready and be prepared for your business. Alternatives, there are alternatives to what you do. These alternatives are how customers solve the problem today. I want to get rid of the concept of competition. Competition has all sorts of nuances. Frankly, a lot of times we talk ourselves out of it. Oh, how am I going to compete with those big, brown paper bag mail people that I can go online and just get an order from, or the giant box, or the whatever? Lots of people compete with them every day. But that's not it. Where you're at, because you're solving problems, what's the alternative? How else do people solve that problem? Okay, it's super important to know. Then get into your solution. How am I going to do it elegantly? Solutions are elegant. I kind of like this picture, the hand holding up the tree that's totally leaning over, because no one wanted to cut down that beautiful tree. So that's an elegant solution and fun while you're at it. Okay. If I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem, 5 minutes thinking about the solution. It's attributed to Albert Einstein. I have no idea if it's true. Trust the internet. What can possibly go wrong? But I love the concept. You focus on the problem, and if you really understand it, you get in people's heads. Because why? When I'm going around with a giant pile of money in my pocket, I'm not thinking about your widget that you sell or the service you provide. I'm thinking about problems that I'm having, and what can I do with that pile of money in my pocket in order to solve my problem? Is it because I'm at the Brewers game and my kids are asking for snacks and treats? The problem I'm having is that my kids are hungry. Maybe they're tired. Maybe they're bored. Maybe they're hot. Maybe they just think because they're at the game, they ought to be able to get sweets. I have no idea what it is, but those are the problems I'm solving. So if vendors are out there solving my problem, it is not that I woke up in the morning and said, man, I need Dippin' Dots today. I will die without Dippin' Dots. That's not the problem I'm solving. It was probably entertaining my kids so I can keep watching the baseball game and root the Brewers on to win a pennant this year. Okay. Benefits, you got to know how you're going to benefit. You got to address how your solution, articulate how your solution addresses the problem. This is the discussion with someone. Hey, you ever feel like go out and do X? Yeah. You ever feel like you're spinning your wheels in business and you don't have much money to show for it? That's why I go into business. The way I can help companies improve is because the way I come alongside you is with empathy, understanding, and humor. Humor because it's hard. Empathy because you want to be known. And the insight allows me to help you know where to go next in your business. That's the benefit I bring. And I don't do it with a system that puts you in a box. I do it with empathy that treats you as a person. That's how I'd articulate the benefits I bring in my business. How do you articulate yours? Okay. What's in it for me? As Pat Miller would say, everyone's favorite radio station, WIIFM. Does it work for the customer? It's got to work for the customer. Okay. And then figure out your value proposition. Okay. Why is your solution uniquely better than all the alternatives? Remember, we're not talking about competition. I'd probably like you to delete that from your vocabulary. It is all over business plans and planning cycles. And who's the competition out there? Garbage, nonsense, alternatives. I want you to focus on alternatives. What makes you uniquely better than everyone else? I put a little bit of mine out there already with that insight, empathy, and humor. I don't know what yours is, but you want to know it. Because if you're dialed in to those pieces and you really understand those 5 pieces I just highlighted, you're going to be able to be prepared. But what about this particular thing that I can do? Cool. Hey, a lot of people go down that route, but let me just tell you where I come from and why I think it's successful when you buy my widget, when you follow my plan, when you buy my service, whatever it is that you're doing. You can articulate it because you're prepared, because you've thought about those things. So let me wrap up and then let me open up to some questions if you want it. Okay. So by the way, value prop is also called unique value or selling proposition. It's got all sorts of names. They basically all mean the same thing, but it's what separates your business from the alternatives. How are you uniquely different? And because you are unique, and most entrepreneurs, because by the way, one of the cheat codes when I work with people, I try and help you build an experience, because an experience tells a better story than just buying an envelope or buying that thing, or, hey, I'm a business consultant. Like, no one likes that story. But if we can turn your business into an experience, people are buying experiences these days. We're not buying things. We want experiences. And when you have an experience, it's easier to separate yourself from the alternatives that are out there. Okay. Let's do a quick recap. Then we'll take some questions. Okay. Preparation eats planning for lunch. 100% guarantee. You've heard variations of this, right? Culture eats strategy for lunch. Preparation eats planning for lunch, because as small business owners, we don't have enough things that go the same. When I worked for a large corporation, probably 95% of everything would essentially happen on autopilot. Whether I showed up and ran reports and helped out executives or not, it would basically run the same. The 5% is in the margin, but 5% of a very big number is a very big impact. Okay. But for small businesses, being prepared, having your mind on and being like, I'm looking for a problem. I'm looking for a problem. Because problems are opportunities. Problems are opportunities. To be clear, when I have a problem as a consumer and you can address my problem, there's an opportunity there to make some money and make my life better. And I think that's what a lot of us are in business to do. You make the world better and you can make some money while you do it, and you can do your thing that you absolutely love to do, and you're in your purpose and what you're created to do. That sounds like a win in my book. Okay. So focus on preparation, not so much on the writing, on the essay, on the getting the whole thing. Doesn't mean you don't write it. You can outline it. You can bullet point it. You could dictate it to yourself. You could have, AI tools write it out for you, whatever you want. So it doesn't mean you don't have anything written, but it does mean we're not using these old antique planning tools that like bog us down. What do we need to know to get better, to focus on and make it short, make it quick, make it beautiful? Okay. Agile. Change is the only constant we have. We're always taking one little chunk at a time, one little piece at a time, one little part at a time. That's why I preach. If you haven't heard me say this before, take it now. 80%. I want you to be 100% at your skill, trade, or craft. Okay. The thing that you do should be amazing. Is it going to be as amazing as everyone else's? I don't know. We're always getting better, right? That's the only one I want you to work on getting to 100%. The rest, I only want you to get to 80%. Why? And the reason is, when we first start doing something, it doesn't take us long to get pretty decent at it. We're not great, but man, that last 20%, it takes all sorts of time, energy, money, resources that we do not have. That's what we covered in the survey. I don't have time. Basically, the answer is I don't plan because I don't have time. I don't do budget because I don't have time. And that's fair. I am not criticizing, but I want you to focus your time then on the things that matter, because we're measuring what matters here in the Simple 60 show. I want you then to focus on, how do we just get to 80%? Because that's good enough. I would say if you're doing something not in your core expertise, if bookkeeping is not your core expertise, just get to 80%. And 80% is probably understanding how to read the numbers, knowing what is and is not correct when your bookkeeper does it, and figuring out how to process the information quickly so that you can make timely changes and be prepared to adjust. Do you need to become the expert at QuickBooks or Xero or some of these other products that are out there? Nope. When you reach that level, that's when you need to start outsourcing. When you feel like you need to reach that level. Same thing with, email platforms or CRMs or marketing systems or podcasting or you name it. If it's not your key thing, just be good enough with 80%. And today you may be at like 20% or 0%. Fine. Then just be okay getting a little bit better and then be okay with that and move on. Okay. But change is the only constant that we have. Okay. Be ready to pivot and follow the opportunities. When you're prepared, you can follow that. When you've got a plan, what happens is these plans end up locking us in and saying, basically, this is the only thing I can do. And we get into some version of self-fulfilling prophecies and confirmation bias, where we're like, but my plan was to go and land 10 large customers. And I keep getting all these little people who want to sign up for my seminars and pay me a bunch of money to do seminars, but I need large customers. And you're like, stop. How many people do you have that want to sign up at $20 every month on a subscription basis? But you're spending all your time going to find the bigger fish, which is cool. Doesn't mean the model doesn't work, but sometimes the opportunities are right in front of us. But when it's not on our plan, our minds aren't prepared to find the opportunities. So be ready to pivot. You might even plan to say, what can I do to pivot? Because I think that's going to make it better. If you don't like pivot, you can say whatever you want. But what we're doing is we're following the opportunities, because there's a problem that you can solve that's addressing itself with how you're reaching the market, and you can go out there and you can be successful. Okay. I said this on the profits. Your plan serves you. It doesn't control you. So whatever you have for plans. Some people are going to say, Brent, you're just talking about planning. You're giving it a different name. Fine. Guilty. Don't care. If this counts as planning for you, God bless you, because I think you're farther ahead than some of the traditional planning. But just remember, whatever you come up with, it serves you. Your budget serves you. Your best guess serves you. Your forecast serves you. Your analysis serves you. Your KPIs serve you. If you're tracking something that doesn't work and you're like, what I'm going to do is I'm going to track my key indicators, how many one-on-one appointments I have with people. Hey, if that doesn't end up turning into more revenue for you, ditch the KPI. We don't have to keep it because I've set it for the year. It's not like I'm waiting for December 31, so I get myself a new KPI. No, change now. It doesn't control you. Swap it out if it doesn't work. That's the benefit. We can be agile. We can move. We can change. Okay. Last one. Just remember problems, problems. Solve these problems better than the alternatives, and people will knock on your door. You will find people who are like, hey, I heard, I saw you, I did, I interacted with you. I'm interested because my cousin told me that it works better than anything else he's ever tried. Do you think you could help me with that? I've got this challenge and I've heard that you can do it. Are you able to help me? Like, those opportunities will start to show up because your mind is looking at problems as opportunities that you can solve better than the other alternatives that are out there. So I've done a whole bunch. I'm open to questions. Anyone want to drop the mute? They want to argue with me? They want to do whatever? I'm open. We can have that discussion. Let's stop the share here and see where we're at. Look at that. I see more smiling faces. More people jumped on while I was on my monologue. So Megan, how you doing? Amina, love it. Thanks for coming on. Anyone got questions, comments, thoughts, frustrations with planning cycles, horror stories with planning cycles? I'm open to all that. Like, we can riff here for a little bit.
I have a comment.
Amy.
And a hello. I'm new to this group.
Then introduce yourself. Tell us what you do.
Sure. I'm in my third year of business. I am a certified coach, professional coach, yet another coach. Alas, I guess what's my unique value proposition, right?
What problem do you solve? What problem do you solve for people?
Of coaches. I really work with people when they're stuck in their careers and they either want to move up, out, or completely pivot. So this notion of what you said about following an opportunity or doing something they really care about. So I do a lot of that. And I also work with companies and help with leaders who are being asked to improve their performance or be better leaders. So leadership development, helping leaders build competencies and capacities to be better leaders.
I love it. Can I pause you, Amy, for a second?
Sure.
I just want everyone to notice. I think you notice the difference between Amy describing her title and Amy describing the problem that she solves. When it describes the problem you solve, suddenly you're like, oh, that might be me. Maybe I know someone who does that. So when you focus on the problem that solves, suddenly things will start coming your way, because I'm like, I might know someone who's maybe on that performance plan, right? So go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, no, that I appreciate that call out. That's a good reminder. I just wanted to comment to say that I like the analogy of thinking of sort of the drop planning and thinking more about preparedness. I actually started my business in 2020. So literally I started in January, and within a month of starting, as we know, everything changed. And so I don't think that I ever was thinking too much about the planning. It was more about, can I even survive? Can I just survive and actually stay in business and learn quickly? So I feel like I'm constantly learning. And this idea of learn as much information. My biggest hangup is just making sure that I'm applying my learning. I have been in this big like learning streak. So it's more about like, how can I apply it? So I like this idea of being, thinking less about these detailed, long planning, forecasts and pictures and all that, but just more of like, what am I trying to do? Will that work? Will that not work? So this idea of simplicity to me really rings true, because I think I've had to kind of learn that, and I'm continuing to learn that, but I'm also learning the importance of applying what I'm learning faster and letting myself mess it up, fail, because I think sometimes I think it has to be a certain way, or I better wait till it looks like this, and then that just never happens. So there were a few things I heard today that were just confirmation that, yep, I need to just keep figuring it out. So thank you.
I love it. And I'll add, when we can take some pressure off of ourselves to have to do it perfectly or get it to 100%, or like it's a big implementation, and say, what's just the one thing I'm gonna do a little bit better today than tomorrow? And then that helps with the preparedness of, oh yeah, I mean, I'll give you an example. One thing that has been working really well for me when I'm prospecting for clients is instead of, hey, I'll send you an email and we can set up another time, is literally right away. Of course, I can't find my phone right now. I put it down for the show. Pull out the phone right away and say, hey, when can we get on the calendar again? When I'm trying to close a deal, I want to make sure to get on their calendar right away. As soon as I basically let them off the phone, the Zoom, the in-person meeting, it's not that I lose control. It's just life happens. What was our number one item that came up for us when all this happened? It was basically, we're busy. And so while, yes, I'd love to meet with you again, Brent, however, now I got to respond to these emails. I got a proposal. I got blah, 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 blah. But if all I remember is, oh, I forgot to build the funnel system and the follow-ups and I'm supposed to put them on my MailChimp and blah, blah. No. If all the one thing I can remember is I'm done meeting and I'm like, oh, hey, can we set up a follow-up appointment right before we hop off the phone? When's a good time to meet? Maybe next week, week after. That's the one thing I remember. Maybe that helps. Or maybe the one thing for you to remember is to put them in the reminder so that in 48 hours, they're on your system. But just focus on one. Quit making it so hard or saying that we've got to do all 78 things that I saw in that like amazing 10-minute professionally prepared video. Kills us. Just kills us. What else?
Yeah, there was also one other thing I wanted to share with everyone, which I was pretty surprised that it happened. I was contacted by someone on LinkedIn back in April at a time when, actually I would think it was May, at a time when actually there was a lot happening in my life and I was kind of all over the place. I'm saying this to say they reached out and asked for a particular service, and it's not really something I do. And I was pretty upfront with the company, like the person who represented it, like, that's not really what I do. And then we had a call and I found I was being incredibly transparent. In my mind, I'm like, yeah, they're probably going to be looking for a different coach or somebody else. But as they started talking to me more about what they were hoping to have done, I heard an opportunity, like I was listening for an opportunity to say, I know something about community building though, and I do that in another company that I'm working with. And if you're looking to do something like this, I might be able to help you with that. So when we hung up, I was like, that's probably something that went out the window. But like a week later, they wrote back and were like, we'd actually like to work with you. So, which was a surprise and a half. So this idea of like pivoting and listening for the opportunity. And I really took a chance, and I really didn't think I was going to even win that business. I didn't even assume that would be possible. I found that just the value of like really listening for what the problem is, and then really letting them, there were two individuals that sort of had two different viewpoints on what they thought the problem was. And one of them, who I think had more clout that I realized later, kind of got her voice, that's what sort of took the lead. And that's when I was like, I think I could help. So I thought that was just really valuable to be like, sit back and really listen and discern and see how could I potentially, pitch myself in this sort of non-assuming way. It actually worked out and it went really well. So I just wanted to share that with another group of entrepreneurs. Like I would have never seen that happen. But I think going through the pandemic, I'm kind of like, it's worth a try.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy, for being willing to share that. Any other final thoughts or comments? How are you going to do? I'm interested. I'm interested in some takeaways. Amy's given some good takeaways, and thank you for that. How is this going to impact what you're going to go out and do as you're thinking about planning? Because you're going to start to hear, oh, it's budget time, it's planning time, it's 2024 is coming up, and the tyranny of like apparently business only ever works around when you flip a page on your calendar. So I'm interested if anyone has a practical takeaway, just one. Again, we're going to keep it simple. One takeaway in terms of preparedness that you can do in your business that are going to help you succeed better than before you join this call.
I like what you said about keeping things simple. I'm a big fan, Brent, of Einstein, who said everything should be reduced to its simplest form and no simpler. And that's coming from a guy who dealt with a whole lot of complexity. I'm a fan of your good work. This is my first time on a call, but have seen you around the Milwaukee business arena, as it were. And So as my first time on the call and newbie in Milwaukee, I'm a Chicagoan up here just for the last couple of years. I liked your idea of pivoting from planning to preparedness, and those are different things. And preparedness is a whole lot wider scope than what's step 2 of the plan, what's step 3 of the plan, what what do we do next? For some people, a long-term plan is, well, gee, what do you want to do after lunch? For other people, it's a step by step process with a whole lot of detail. So I like the fact that you broke that out into the concept of preparedness and being able to pivot. And I think that's incredibly important, even as your metaphor of the fishing boat versus the aircraft carrier with small businesses. And they can compete with big box. They can compete with chains. And they can do that by delivering exactly to the problem that their individual customers have, that they who walk in the door or give a call and say, hey, I have the problem and I think you have the solution. Let's talk. So good content here. I was impressed with your deck, with the slide deck here, man.
Thanks, Russ. Appreciate that. Well, hey, I think if we can walk away and understand the preparedness is a wider field of view, right? There is more out there, and in a way it seems more intimidating, but what it does is it means we're watching for more opportunities that are out there, and we don't end up as blindsided. There's plenty of days we wake up and we're like, oh my goodness, I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do here to deal with this, whatever. But that's going to happen whether or not we have a wide field of view. At least when we have the wider field of view, we're able to take our hustle and our energy and our amazingness and our skill, craft, or trade and put it to use somewhere else, rather than continuing to dig in and struggle in places where it may not be effective. Cool. If this topic was of value to anyone, I'm doing a version of this. It's a 2-hour seminar that I'm going to be doing on December 2nd. It's free to attend. There is a deposit to hold the seat. An organization is underwriting it, and we're really going to start focusing on selling your story. I talked a little bit about the story. One of the reasons the biggest reason I don't like business plans is that they don't tell a compelling story. Everything we do when we're doing with our business should be a compelling story, because if it's not compelling, we shouldn't do it. And most people don't leverage their story. We're going to dig more into the 6 topics that I covered today when we started talking about problem, customer, solution, benefit, alternative, and value proposition. We will dig into that more, but really I want to focus it around how do you turn it into your story? How do you make it your story? So that's something that continuing on those themes are important. I just dropped a link in the chat. It's on December 2nd. This should be a Saturday, usually running about 9 to 11. Come check it out. It's on about 25th and North, 24th and North, St. Anne's. It is free to attend, but like I said, there's a $10 deposit that's refunded when you attend. So definitely check that out. If you have not checked out some of the other things going on in the Idea Collective, I do want to encourage you to do that, because they are a sponsor of this show and have been amazing at that. And then again, I have to thank Bank59 and Quick Trip for being our sponsors. So with that, I'm Brent Halfwassen, Milwaukee Small Business Coach. Thank you for coming on, and I will talk to everyone later.